harder we suppress things, the more of a problem it becomes. So you suppress your stress by just continuing to work. It's going to cause problems. You suppress problems from your past. They're going to continue to show up. You have PTSD. You suppress your flashbacks and things that the cues or reminders you get in the environment that remind you of the traumas. You keep avoiding those. It's a form of suppression. They pop up now in flashbacks and in dreams. OCD. You suppress your urges to do compulsions or have these obsessions, and what happens? It gets stronger. What happens with Tourette's syndrome? You suppress your tics, and they will come out pretty strong a little bit later. So, it's suppression doesn't work, and just like this is why restrictive diets in the long term don't work for most people.
Welcome to the Legendary Life Podcast, where it's all about taking control of your health, losing fat, transforming your body, and living the life you deserve with celebrity fitness trainer and longevity enthusiast, Ted Rice. Hey guys, just a quick update. I'm finishing the last touches on my new updated masterclass, and I'm super excited because if you watched my previous masterclass, you know that it was good and it may have helped you get to the next level in your progress. Well, this is an updated version and I'm sure you're going to love it. I'll be revealing the new updated 5-step process I'm using with my clients because I've made a lot of improvements to the way that I'm coaching my clients over the past few years. And my clients are getting incredible results. So I'm going to share with you in this masterclass the process I've been using to help my clients burn fat, boost energy, and build better habits for life. Can't wait to share it with you. We're going to release the training on July 17th, but right now you can sign up for the waiting list. Just go to legendarylifepodcast.com/waiting list to sign up. That's legendarylifepodcast.com/waiting list to sign up. If you're looking to get into the best shape of your life and you're over 40, you're gonna want to watch this masterclass. That's it for me. See you there. What's up, my friend, and welcome to the Legendary Life Podcast. Today, I have another great interview for you. I have Dr. Chris Friesen back on the show. For those of you who aren't familiar with him, he's a psychologist who's always been fascinated by what makes people successful. Now, he's not just any psychologist, he's a neuropsychologist. I'm not going to get into detail of what that is, but basically they specialize in assessing brain function and primarily disorders of the brain. But he primarily helps professional, national, Olympic, and up-and-coming elite athletes, as well as other high achievers like entrepreneurs and executives, achieve their personal and professional potential. And Chris is someone I consider as a friend. We've never hung out in person, at least not yet, but we've had a relationship spanning years. And I love having Chris on the show because he's one of the few people that I speak to or interview where I come away from the conversation having a better understanding about my brain, my behavior, and what I need to do to get to the next level. So we get into motivation, why it happens after you take action, not before. We talk about how to improve motivation. We talk about what the key issue is for people who tend to ruminate a lot or have a lot of negative thoughts and why that happens. And most importantly, how to deal with it. So if you have a lot of negative thoughts and negative, out of control thinking that tends to be on the darker side, you definitely want to listen to this episode. We also talk about ADHD and how a lot of people are misdiagnosed, especially entrepreneurs, and what the right test is if you feel like you do have ADHD. So we get into all that and more. If you're looking to achieve the next level of success in your life, which of course, that's why you're listening to The Legendary Life, you're going to love this episode. It's always a pleasure talking with him. So without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Dr. Chris Friesen. All right, Chris Friesen, welcome back to the show. How are things going, my friend?
They're going good in the Great White North. It's happening up here.
Yeah, and you and I, we were just talking before we press record. I feel like sometimes the best information starts then, and I should just start recording before I even hop on and start talking at all. But we were catching up. We were talking about ourselves, managing burnout. We were talking about our clients, my clients, with their challenges, trying to get in shape, your clients trying to manage their stress levels. It all comes down to managing your stress levels, doesn't it? At least that's the way the biggest shift in my perspective, Chris, and I'd love to hear your perspective about this because you're the neuropsychologist, the performance psychologist, but it's like everything's just about stress for me right now. If you're monitoring your level of arousal or stress, you're going to be in the zone. You're going to be that rock star high achiever in your career or business. You're going to be that great parent. You're going to be able to get in shape. But if you're riding the edge of burnout, you're just one disaster away from either some type of physical or psychological ailment. What do you think?
100%. There's some new research that came out maybe 6 months ago showing that those who have overactive brains, and I forget the metric they use, like I do quantitative EEGs, which measures the electrical activity of your brain. And we conceptualize this as high beta. Beta is fast wave activity in the brain. So people who have excess fast wave activity in their brains die earlier. And obviously it's a marker of stress, but it's also a marker of personality as well. And anxiety. So these are all connected, of course. People have personality tendencies to easily experience negative emotions and stress, what's called neuroticism or negative affect in the research, that normal personality trait, which technically half of us are high, half of us are low. By definition, these individuals are more likely to have stress and anxiety in their lives. And if you think of it simply as like a car, if a car is revving really high for long periods of time, the engine's going to break down faster. So this is something that I'm seeing not only in my clients, I see it in myself as well. And so as we're, getting older, we're both approaching, well, I'm 47 now, so almost 50 years old. Now I'm officially old, I think. My mind doesn't think that. My body will tell me sometimes that you're not quite, the acrobatic goalie you were once when you were 20. But I think this is a huge, huge issue. I mean, everyone claims every generation is a stress generation. The nuclear war threat in the 1980s, right? It's always something, right? The Vietnam War, there's always stress, right? Pandemics and war in the Ukraine, and it's all the same shit. We all like to think we're special, and this is another topic we can touch on. I think there's a big problem with narcissism going on in our society altogether, and we're all falling victim to this. But there is this: the issue of stress is massive. If your stress is too high, it's going to give you health-related issues. When you're young, you can get away with it. You can, work long hours, get stressed out, go. And you're not going to really notice. You might notice a slight performance decrement, temporarily. But what happens once you hit 40, 50 years old, this is when all that stuff catches up to most people. And people just can't keep going like this. So this is an issue. Stress people have to take stress seriously. It has so many negative effects. We can talk for 2 hours just on stress.
Yeah. And I love it. For me, and I'll keep repeating this on my show, it's like, this is all about stress. This is all about stress. What is a great life about? It's about managing stress. If you're focused on the future, worrying about the past, not in the present, something's triggering that. You're not in the zone. And even for my clients, I've been looking at stress eating. It's like every single client that is overweight or obese, stress is a big component. And there's this narrative going on in the health and fitness industry or health and fitness influencers. It's like, it's really about the diet. What you need to do, you just need to follow keto, or you need to follow carnivore. Talking about narcissism, I get into a lot of arguments on Twitter. I used to back away from them, but now I'm just like, I am going to crush you with data, because it's like people are just, it's creating this whole thing. Anyway, I'm kind of going off on some tangents, but it's all sort of a big, like you alluded to earlier, it's this big sort of concoction of stressful events, both at our personal levels and the societal level. And man, it can be challenging to deal with. Talk a little bit about the rise of narcissism. I read an article about that and I found it fascinating, but I know you're the guy to really break that down. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on? What is narcissism, just so that we can all be on the same page? And then what specifically is showing that it's on the rise, and what's the rationale, what's the reasoning why that's happening?
So there may be specific research on this, and actually I'm not aware of that. So there may be evidence that this is actually on the rise. I believe there is. I see, I've got lots of emails from various journals that I subscribe to. I don't have enough time to read all the articles, but I do see lots of stuff on narcissism. So it's narcissism has many kind of meanings. There's like narcissistic personality disorder, which is sort of what psychologists would think of as narcissism. The way I'm defining narcissism is an excessive focus on the self, lack of empathy for others, the need for, admiration and this sort of thing. And I think this stems from, and this is like, easy to say, of course, now, but of course it stems from social media and technology. So technology is amazing. It helps us do things like right now, speaking from many, many million, thousands of miles apart. And it, technology is amazing. But think of the rise of social media, telephones. No one uses the word telephone. Cell phones, cameras, social media, and these issues. Everyone. It's like a bad Black Mirror episode. I think there's an episode on that where everyone has to like give each other likes. You get like social credit scores, these kinds of things. So everyone's trying to be noticed. There's a deep human need to be liked by people, of course. So everyone wants to be liked and supported. And our social media, as you know, is set up to show you things, not just social media, your YouTube. If you watch YouTube, it's going to recommend videos that you tend to watch or like for good reason. It's trying to, in a way, it's not benign or benevolent. It's designed to make you continue to stay on the platform. And so what happens, we get into an echo chamber. And so our opinions get too strong about things and we start to become less open-minded. I know I've fallen into this trap, getting really arrogant. I'll give you an example. One was EMDR. It's a type of eye movement desensitization training. This is a treatment for PTSD. And originally, what wasn't just my idea. Lots of people in my field, when there's studies that showed it's no different than exposure therapy. So the idea of talking about a trauma over and over again is called exposure, exposing yourself to the traumatic event or whatever is giving you anxiety and fear. That's been shown. It's like a principle. It's not even a theory. It's a principle that this works across the board for most people, for most problems. We do this constantly every day. You have your first podcast, you're nervous, and now you've done thousands of them and you're not nervous anymore. This is called exposure. So we do this all the time. And, I used to think that this was bogus because the theory was some bullshit at the time, I thought. The neurological idea that the person just made up, which is you move your eyes back and forth, you're following the therapist's finger as you recount a traumatic event. And there was this big neurological explanation, like pseudo-neurological explanation for it's the eye movements and the left versus right brain and all this stuff like this, which is mostly bogus. At least that's what we thought at the time. And we still think I don't know if there's good evidence. I haven't looked into it in too much detail recently, that it's no better than exposure therapy in other forms. But interestingly, Andrew Huberman. So he's talked about this idea. It made me think about this, which is some research showing, I don't know if he's connected these two, but in my head, I connected them as walking outside, defocusing or looking left to right as you walk outside versus like being on a treadmill has a stronger like stress reduction effect by doing that, and so there may be some neurological neurological explanation of higher levels of coherence, which means parts of your brain communicating more in sync, things like this. And so I'm starting to wonder, maybe, that wasn't completely bogus. Maybe there is something to do with the eyes, even though it's not a massive effect beyond exposure. So anyways, and people tell me this and I'd say that's just like bullshit. It's just exposure. But now I'm starting to wonder, geez, am I getting arrogant? Because maybe I'm wrong and I'm going to be proven wrong. And everybody's got a really strong opinion on social media. And just kind of like you're describing, this is an issue. And this has been kind of, I wouldn't say humbling for me, but I'm trying to be more humble. I know I've done a lot of training in school and seen thousands of patients, over the years. And you never know, you could be wrong. And so social media is not set up for people to have, conversations that are open-minded, that people change their mind. When you're behind a screen, you're semi-anonymous. It's easy to write down exactly what you're thinking without a filter of your frontal lobe filtering this out. And so we get polarized. So we get information from our social media that just is an echo chamber of our own opinions. So if you start to believe in conspiracy theories, or if you start to believe like the COVID vaccine's got a microchip or whatever it is, you're going to continually get more videos or things on your social media that agree with that. And so therefore, what we know is when we're exposed to ideas again and again, we lose track of where we got the information. We just remember it and we start to believe it as a fact. So there's a famous guy in Canada named David Suzuki. He's a geneticist turned, he has a show called The Nature of Things. So he's basically like a host of a science show. And I read one of his books years ago, and he said brought this exact thing up, that we remember facts or information, but we don't remember what the source was. And so, people could spew stuff that's incorrect. If you keep hearing it over and over again, people start to believe it, especially if it's someone you respect or you follow or this sort of thing. So you're going to question it.
And if they have videos of themselves on Instagram shirtless and they look really good.
Yeah, totally natural, of course.
That's a whole nother conversation. Liver King, there you go. But this is the thing, right? It's of course, it's all bullshit, right? All you see is people, I don't take a picture of myself when I'm constipated on the can, right? This is not, I post on social media. I don't take a picture of myself and I'm like, I hate my job today, or, another patient I'm not helping. You know what I mean? I don't write that into, so you only see the all-star team of my, I don't take many pictures, but if I look at my Facebook, the last pictures are probably when I got my new car 5 years ago. Other than that, I don't really post anything. But so it looks like you look at me, a guy's an author, and it just looks like I got it all together, and I kind of do, but I'm still human, and we just see, and we're being reinforced to present the best part of ourselves to others. Of course, you post anything these days and someone's going to attack you. Again, everyone's got balls of steel all of a sudden when it comes to this. I think Mike Tyson had some quote where he talked about people all of a sudden getting really tough or something on social media in the old days, that just didn't happen, which is true. If you're not willing to say that right to that guy's face or gal's face, you shouldn't say it. And this is an issue because we are getting more and more narcissistic as a society. We want to be liked, which is normal. But our self-worth is now being based on, how many likes we have, how many views on my YouTube videos or whatever it may be. And, it's also polarizing people as well. So it's this liberation of knowledge through the internet is an amazing thing, but it's also problematic. Another quick example is I do tons of adult ADHD assessments. Since the pandemic, I swear I get 1 or 2 people a week asking me to come to do an assessment, to see other adults, see if they have ADHD. 98% do not have ADHD, and I tell them this. They're just stressed out.
Exactly. It's stress. These are high levels of anxiety.
Oh, I got ADHD. I just can't focus. I just, I need some of that Ritalin. Yeah, it's like you need a massage and to learn how to meditate. Okay.
And this is the problem. People don't want to hear this. A lot of people, I got to be careful how I say this, but there's the neurodiversity movement.
What is that, Chris?
So, there's a lot of this with being recognized as subgroups, from sexual orientation, and all these things are obviously getting lots of press. The neurodiversity is this idea that, everyone's neurodiverse, and these people with usually neurodevelopmental disorders like autism, now ADHD and things like this, that they are, there's groups developing, which is good to help support each other and not to pathologize it completely, even though to be diagnosed, it has to be causing you impairment in your life. But everyone wants to be neurodiverse all of a sudden. Everyone wants to say, you know what? The reason I've not been successful in my life, as successful as I wish I was because there was this thing that nobody noticed, ADHD, this neurodevelopmental disorder that's causing all my problems. And if I could get that label, because I saw someone on TikTok and they said they have ADHD and they said they picked their nose and, tap their foot, and that's a sign of ADHD, which is not. But, and so therefore I know I do that too. And of course, ADHD is an exaggeration of normal traits. So everyone loses focus. Everyone gets bored. But you have to have a lot more than the average person. So again, this is that specialness, that narcissism that people want to be labeled as different, be in a special group, a neurodiverse group, for example, of ADHD. And then they have this label to kind of point to that can explain all the problems in their life, which would not be accurate. For people with real ADHD, this caused tons of problems. That's an accurate thing. And get medication, for example, Vyvanse, Adderall, like try your friend's Adderall and you'll feel more focused and you'll feel better. But of course, it's a stimulant. It's like a form of amphetamine.
Yeah, drugs work.
That's right.
And some people feel great on cocaine, which we know is not great for you, for your brain, for your heart, for your social life, for your dating life. Right.
Exactly. It won't be as strong as cocaine, but
right. What we feel isn't always real, or it's not.
Yeah.
Let's say it's not. And when you say this, I'm making jokes about drugs and things, but what I really think about, it's someone going into the gym, killing themselves with a workout, thinking, okay, that was a great workout. And what we teach our clients, it's like, did you do more than last time? Because this is about metrics. And so how are you measuring that performance? Are you just feeling good? Or is there some sort of measurable, to kind of what you're saying, I see it a lot in the diet movements, right? And my hypothesis is it is so hard to change your behavior. I don't know about the research on this and the psychological research, but just talking about it from my experience as a coach working with people for the past 24 years, it's like there needs to be what you might call a shift in identity, right? Or a shift in core beliefs about who you are. Maybe might be the more like CBT approach, something like that. And it's really hard to do that. But if you go from like, I'm overweight, it's because I eat crap and don't move enough. I just eat too many calories. And a good percentage of those calories are from processed foods. And if someone tells me, hey, there's calories in, calories out, you need to lift weights because that'll preserve muscle mass. And then you need to shoot for some daily steps every day. It's just like, man, I know, but I'm just not motivated. But if we change that narrative around like, listen, you know why you're overweight? Because big pharma, big food is making you overweight. They're selling you the junk. Of course, you're putting it in your mouth and buying it, etc. You're the one bringing it home and eating it, but it's like big food is doing that to you. And the reason big food's doing that to you, and I think there is some criticism about corporations. I don't love quote unquote big food and big pharma, just to get that out of the way. But I don't buy in the narrative that I'm saying now either, which is big food is making me fat to make money. And their buddies in big pharma, because we do know there are it's an incestuous relationship in some cases with food corporations and pharmaceutical companies. But then my friends at big pharma will sell me the drugs, and I'll have to take these drugs for my chronic conditions for the rest of my life, which is a great business model. If you've got to sell something that, medications that someone needs to keep taking and they're going to live for a long time, and actually the medication is going to help you live longer because it'll stop the heart attack or stroke from happening. And if you go low carb or keto or carnivore, you're fighting against that. In fact, the government, you're right, it's all about this, and I'm picking on the keto and carnivore people because that's just who's in my mind and who I've been going back and forth with on Twitter like the past week. But it happens in so many other areas. And if you I'm like fired up talking about it, and I don't believe any of that stuff, but just getting into that narrative, there's an enemy to fight against, to rally together against. And now I'm a hero and I've got a community. And so now, even though I just want to eat I just want to eat an apple and a sandwich with some bread on it, a hamburger with the bun instead of without, but I'm going to stick to it because I'm part of this movement. I think vegans are the same way. Not all vegans, and again, not all keto or carnivore, low carb people. And I think there's even legitimate reasons to do all those things, but it's just like, after looking at this, Chris, for years, I'm like, what the hell is going on with people and this craziness? And that's what I've come up with. They feel special. And like you said, and then I'd love to hear anything you have to say about it. And then, that you feel special as a result. I feel like my message isn't so special, although it is, because I feel like I'm one of the few fitness people talking about, the neuroscience and the psychology or the biopsychosocial approach to things. But man, telling people to eat fewer calories and lift weights and get more steps in is not and that it's not the government's fault that you're overeating, or, special interests who are manipulating you to overeat. It's just, it's a different sort of, it's just a different message. And there's no like strong community around it. It's just like, it's TED or it's some other individuals, but we're not organized into a group that has like the keto summit every year, where you get to show up and hear all your favorite influencers all hang out and talk about the same thing. And you get to be part of that either in person or online. Anyway.
It's tribalism.
Yeah. I feel like I went off on a big tirade there, but
it's no, this is similar to what we're discussing here. It's part of tribalism, part of black and white thinking. You're either with us or you're against us kind of thinking. Very unsophisticated thinking. And this idea, right? The world is, people are complicated, and diet and weight loss, et cetera, is not very complicated. Of course, things are new. If you're part of a tribe, I'm the keto tribe, for example. I'm not, but if I was, like, you feel like you're part of something, and so there's some social accountability. How do I face my friends if I told them I'm keto and then I'm like, not going keto? And so that can help motivate people. This shows that we're still tribes and still want to be part of tribes and part of groups, just like neurodiversity. Just, I want to be part of the ADHD tribe, even if you don't have ADHD, for example. And I mean, if you do, it's good. Like, you get support. This can motivate you. But what you're saying is, the research that you've looked at suggests that none of that really matters, other than you lose weight for these things because your calories probably go down because your restrictive diet. And diets don't work, right? Diets don't work. You're going to bounce back as soon as your body's going to slow its metabolism, and then hold on to fat. As soon as you get your calories, you have a cheat day or whatever it is, right? The body's going to fight against this, and this the unsexy part is, like you say, there's a psychology behind this that has no specific name. There's no keto name or some name. It's like, look, to get in shape and to be as healthy as you can possibly be, you need to cut back on calories. It doesn't matter so much as people think in terms of how much of this is like, if you're carb free or not. That doesn't matter so much, as I'm hearing what you're saying. And you have to exercise more. So, calories in, calories out. And it has to be something that's maintainable in your life. That's not like you have to train for 2.5 hours every day. That no one's going to do this unless that's part of their job, or they're retired or so. Even then, it'd be difficult to do. And it's really about what's getting in the way of this. And like you're saying, stress is getting in the way, motivation issues are getting in the way. And then the people, let's say keto or carnivore, again, that social group, that tribalism can motivate them to stick to what they're doing. And so with your stuff, it's like, look, I'm just telling you the facts. You don't need to worry about all this other stuff. You just have to get yourself to do this and maintain this, become a habit, make it part of your lifestyle, and make it something that's maintainable. Like, it's not really, and for some people, it's really hard to maintain carnivore or keto diets. Just like you go to your kid's birthday, what do you like? I refuse to eat the birthday cake. Your kid has pizza, or I don't know. And you're like, I'm just going to eat like ground beef and a salad. And I mean, fine, right? But there's more to life than that sometimes. And so it can be difficult to stick to something that's so restrictive. And this is the thing, right? The harder we suppress things, the more of a problem it becomes. So you suppress your stress by just continuing to work. It's going to cause problems. You suppress problems from your past. They're going to just continue to show up. You have PTSD. You suppress your flashbacks and things that the cues or reminders you get in the environment that remind you of the traumas, and you keep avoiding those. It's a form of suppression. They pop up now in flashbacks and in dreams. OCD. You suppress your urges to do compulsions or have these obsessions. And what happens? It gets stronger. What happens with Tourette's syndrome? You suppress your tics and they will come out pretty strong a little bit later. So it's suppression doesn't work. And just like this is why restrictive diets in the long term don't work for most people, because you need to have something that works in your lifestyle that doesn't take massive willpower. I have a YouTube video where I talk about, inspiration is not enough. You can't just feel inspired because I'm making this, I got to pick on Tony Robbins. He's doing well in his life, but and it's a gigantic simplification of what he does. But the idea of Tony Robbins, which is not quite true, but you go there, you get all pumped up over like a 72 hours straight. And then I'm going to make these massive changes. And you come back and you're like excited for like 4 or 5 days. And then you go back to your normal baseline. Of course, he's aware of that and he has strategies. Who knows what he does? But this idea of inspiration is definitely not enough. And of course, motivation does not come. Like motivation is an outcome, not a state.
Hey guys, just a quick update. I'm finishing the last touches on my new updated masterclass, and I'm super excited because if you watched my previous masterclass, you know that it was good and it may have helped you get to the next level in your progress. Well, this is an updated version and I'm sure you're going to love it. I'll be revealing the new updated 5-step process I'm using with my clients because I've made a lot of improvements to the way that I'm coaching my clients over the past few years. And my clients are getting incredible results. So I'm going to share with you in this masterclass the process I've been using to help my clients burn fat, boost energy, and build better habits for life. Can't wait to share it with you. We're going to release the training on July 17th. But right now, you can sign up for the waiting list. Just go to legendarylifepodcast.com/waiting list to sign up. That's legendarylifepodcast.com/waiting list to sign up. If you're looking to get into the best shape of your life and you're over 40, you're gonna want to watch this masterclass. That's it for me. See you there. Talk a little bit more about that. A motivation is an outcome, not a state. What is that? Everybody thinks, I'm not motivated. That's why I'm not taking action if I just had the motivation. But you're saying it's an outcome. Please explain.
Yeah. So this is like the number one crux. So if I give one definition of what makes people successful is that the most successful people, whatever that is, make their day-to-day decisions based on their goals and their values. Values means who do I want to be? What's important to me? Not on their moods, energy levels, motivation levels, or what their mind says they can or cannot do. So motivation comes from doing something even though you thought in your head you couldn't do it. So we touched upon this before we started recording. The limbic system. So the emotional system, then people think of amygdala, this sort of thing, the negative emotion system. So this is designed, and I work with this with clients even today, every day. So our limbic system is an older part of our brain versus our frontal lobe. I know you talk about this on your podcast and stuff, so this is good. So people know what we're talking about. Frontal lobe is a evolutionarily newer part of the brain. But and if you look at our closest relatives, chimpanzees, apes, gorillas, you look at guys like us, we have these thick, tall foreheads, and you look at a chimpanzee and you'll see like a ski slope. And why is that? Mostly because they have really small frontal lobes. But they're super smart for animals, right? And so this is that's why they don't have language. They don't have the cognitive power that we do, obviously. And the limbic system, which is the emotional system, which is a survival system, is designed for two things: to help us gain pleasure right now or reduce uncomfortableness right now. It has no long-term perspective whatsoever. It's only designed to do those two things. If you lived in line with your Freud called this the id. So people thinking fast, thinking slow, thinking fast. This is all the same shit that everyone just fucking packages over and over again. So it's all the same thing. You can think of it from a neurological perspective. It's called the limbic system. And the limbic system, if you lived your life in line with the limbic system, you would sleep in as long as you could until you're painfully in bed and hurts to lie down. You would masturbate all day. You would just watch fun movies, and you would eat chocolate cake, and you would do whatever's pleasurable and whatever is not going to cause you any discomfort. You would never exercise or do anything else. So that would be like a pure limbic existence, or hedonistic or hedonic existence. Obviously, it does not lead to success in life.
Some people, I feel, are operating not from that extreme, but certainly from, a version of that.
Of course. Yeah, this is the problem. A lot of people were doing this too much. We see this on social media too. Everyone else seems to be having fun. No one seems to be stressed. Again, remember, it's a gigantic filter that you see, a filter over people's lives that highlights the positives and de-highlights the negatives, right? And so we start to think that we should be doing that too. I should be having more fun. I should be laughing all the time. Everyone else seems to be laughing and having a good time. They have getting new cars and new houses, and I don't know, like everything's fun. They're always ripped, like this kind of thing.
I want to say one thing though. I want to interject for a second. Even if you took a photo, and this is where we kind of shoot ourselves in our own foot. Even if I took a photo of me sad and I was having a moment and I wanted to post that vulnerable moment on social media and I wrote something about it, it wouldn't do well. I would have to really get the lighting down. I would have to mess around with the camera to get the lighting right, so that you could really see the tears and the, all the things, all the facial, the micro expressions, all that stuff to really show like I'm in pain. And that would take me out of that moment to do all that. And, people won't pay attention unless, I go and take professional photos just so people will pay attention, because people won't pay attention unless it's a total train wreck type of situation,
And that's what I was sort of trying to say earlier, is that not that we're all just narcissistic pricks. It's that, the system is set up to make us narcissistic. It's not like all of a sudden our genes change, because narcissism and personality is like 50% genetic. It's not like our genes flipped in the last 20 years. It's the system, the government, the system of free reign capitalism.
Are you talking about the man?
Yeah, the man, Gustav or whatever, who controls the world behind a curtain somewhere, hiding somewhere on a famous island or secret island. But it's just the way the system is set up, which is just humans' technology and humans' ability to create technology that will target our weaknesses, which is exactly what social media does. Intermittent reinforcement of scrolling. And then every once in a while, it's not every 10 scrolls. It's not every 5 minutes you see something you really like. It's intermittent, not quite random, but you have to, the more you scroll, the more likely you're going to see something and that you like. And therefore you're going to continue to want to scroll and get stuck on. Think of TikTok. That's like the worst possible thing. That's super addictive. But to go back to this idea of, so motivation comes, it's really self-efficacy, which is your belief in your ability to do things. And self-efficacy doesn't come in moments of inspiration. Like think of anyone successful, anyone, famous writers. Do they only write when they're feeling jazzed? No. Did Michael Jordan only play when I'm feeling good tonight? I'll get on the court. No. You only go to work when you feel like it? No, because you'd lose your job pretty much within a week. And this is what happens is you start to do things that your limbic system is telling you can't do, which is this, some people call the fear of effort, but it's really the avoidance of pain. So for example, it's avoidance of pain. So for example, let's say like you and I will partially work for ourselves, and therefore you can kind of make your own schedule. And there's lots of stuff maybe that comes in through your email that looks really interesting, or a new podcast, but you have some actual work to do. If it's not a client, it's more like something you just have to work on. It's no real due date, but ideally you do it this week. You're going to have to delay that gratification to do it. And so motivation comes when you've repeatedly not listened to your limbic system, which is telling you, I don't want to do this. It's going to be too painful. And you have to strengthen something called the observing self, or that's in like Buddhist language, but in neuroscience, we call this metacognition, which is a unique, as far as we know, pretty much unique human ability, which is to observe our own thinking and emotions. And you can say, instead of I'm mad, I'm noticing I'm feeling mad. That's the observing self saying, I'm noticing I'm feeling mad. I'm noticing the urge to, as opposed to I gotta check this email. That's called hooked. You're hooked by your thoughts, your emotions. It's really the limbic system saying pleasure, go to the pleasure right now. But to say, I'm noticing the strong urge to check my email. And once you're able to do that, you're able to put some space between stimulus and response. So you need that noticing. And then you decide, what did I say I was going to do today? Like when I wrote my book years ago, I always thought, okay, on Friday, when I sit down to write the book, took Fridays off to write the book, I'm going to be like so motivated. I can't wait. I'm dealing with some really difficult medical legal clients. I don't want to be here. I hate this. And Friday comes, and all of a sudden my mind's telling me, like, it made no sense at the time. I mean, I figured it out pretty quick, but my mind's saying, you're a hell of a writer. I'm not in the mood. I'm not motivated. I'm tired today, et cetera, et cetera. And I had to do what I talk about. It's like, I'm noticing the thought that I can't write. I'm noticing the thought that I'm really tired. Thank you, mind. That's your limbic system doing what it's programmed to do, which is to prevent me from feeling discomfort right now. But I'm going to do it anyways, and then decide, because this is called the 5-minute rule. You do something for 5 minutes and then decide if this was worth, whether you're really too tired to work out, to write your book, or whatever it is. And you'll see 98% of the time, your limbic system overpredicted how bad it was. And so you have to understand, this is how your software and your hardware works in your brain. It's set up to fuck you up, basically. It's set up to take you away from your values and goals. No one lives purely.
Or at least, wouldn't you argue that it's modern times where we're experiencing this mismatch? Or you're saying that even when we're hunting and gathering, this probably was an issue too?
It's always been in us, but in those times, let's say hunting and gathering times, we had to rely a lot more on our limbic system. This is that's when it really evolved, and that's when it's designed for. Which is, I heard a growling of sounded like a tiger, in that bush over on the right, or that jungle over there, and therefore, I don't want to really go that way. I want to go a different direction today. That's your limbic system probably doing what it's supposed to do. Even today, if you're walking across the street looking at your phone and a bus almost runs you over and honks its horn, and your limbic system helps you jump out of the way before you think logically, is that bus going to hit me? You're like, you hear the horn and you jump back. That's limbic system overtaking your frontal lobe and just making you take action. That's your limbic system doing what it's supposed to do. If someone's like, attacking you, you fight back. That's the limbic system doing what it's supposed to do. Being in love, and being sexual, the limbic system takes over. And that's in that moment, that's hopefully what you're supposed to do. And that's okay. So the limbic system, we want a limbic system. You have to have a limbic system. It's part of the deal. There's no getting out of this. It's part of the human condition.
Hey, Chris, is the reward system part of the limbic system?
Yeah. Although, yes, but we can also get rewarded from things that are like living in our lives or doing something in line with our goals and values. We will feel a sense of reward. And so that's also a part of it as well. So the fact that our limbic system is trainable in a way, and so is our living our lives in line with our goals and values is trainable through positive reinforcement, which is rewards. So yeah, and this is the thing, right? You need to understand that the limbic system is going to constantly put barriers to your long-term goals and success. And the limbic system is going to try and get you to do whatever is most fun or least painful right now. And just going to give you an example, like going back to PTSD, the exposure therapy has a kind of a high dropout rate, but the people who finish it do really well. Why? Because you have to face uncomfortable fears. So your limbic system's activated, right? And it's telling you, drop out, avoid, don't do this. Don't fully engage in this therapy because I don't feel good right now. But you have to activate your frontal lobe to say, look, no, wait, I hear you, limbic system. I'm noticing the thought that I don't want to do this. Thank you, limbic system, for working. But I've decided that I'm doing this for the long-term outcome, to get better in the long term. It's going to be no pain, no gain, just like in personal training, right? If, we accept that for the most part in personal training, in working out. We don't complain when we feel anxious. When we sweat and when our muscles hurt. We actually do the opposite. We actually think this is good, but it's a physical pain. If I just started kicking you in the calves and say, yeah, this, and you're like, this isn't good for you, by the way, versus you training your calves, training the calves, that pain is going to, let's just pretend it's actually the same physical pain. That pain is going to feel good to you because in the long term, it's going to help you with your goals and values. This is going to make my calves stronger.
Let's stop for a second right there, because I think that's so important. What you're talking about, is the story we're telling ourselves about what we're experiencing, the pain that we're experiencing. And if you're listening right now and you're catching yourself, what you said before, it's like, I'm noticing this, I'm noticing that. And one of the things that's coming up, it's like, you really have to notice the story that you're telling, especially when you're doing something that is going to be good for you. I just think that's such an important point. Obviously, that's kind of the thing that you talk about a lot. I talk about it too, just because I think you come to the same. I think no matter what it is, like, you want to hear something funny, Chris? I was in Thailand. I was doing a meditation course there, and the East out there, it's not what people think. And so I was doing this meditation course, and then it was being taught by a monk, and there was a European woman in the group with me, and she was like, "Well, in the West, we just focus on achievement and hard work and, and she was implying that they didn't. And then what the monk said, he's like, yeah, well, meditation's hard work. I forget exactly what he said, but he was like, yeah, it's hard work. You got to sit there, you got to, breathe, and, being a monk's not easy. And it's just, there's no way of getting around doing the work. And if we want to become a better version of ourselves, there's just no way around it. So how do you help people? Obviously, this conversation right now, hopefully it's helping people to gain some awareness and to check themselves. And I don't even think that this is new to the majority of people who are listening to this show right now. But it's like we need that constant reminder, because just in the moment when you're feeling that pain, you're like, I'm just too tired to go on a walk, or just too busy to go hit my workout, or you know what, I really deserve this treat even though I'm overweight or maybe even obese, and I've been waiting way more than I should be for my health goals, right? It's a good reminder. How do you help people get, other than, how could you share even a story maybe of like, how do you put this into action with your clients or your patients?
The number one thing is you first have to have knowledge and understanding of how the brain works. It's like my YouTube channel. I'll say, optimizing your psychology, physiology, and neurology. You have to understand how your physiology, neurology, and psychology work. And understanding the idea of exposure, understanding the idea of a limbic system that's designed to prevent you from doing things that may be in your long-term interests, that's only designed to reduce uncomfortableness right now. So you have to understand that that is going on, because people think it's them talking, but it's like, is that you when you're super tired and you're grumpy, or when you're starving, or you're drunk, or is that really the real you? Like, enough of this bullshit, real you. It's we're influenced by things, and we're all human. But we have to understand this. We all have this process, this limbic system, and a frontal lobe that are constantly in conflict, and you need to be aware of that. That's the number one first thing that people have to understand. And anyone who works with me, I have to lecture them on this for like the first session, because there's the agenda is to come to me and say, let's say someone with anxiety, or it could be anxiety for the Olympics tryouts, or whatever it is. Doesn't matter if they're sport or non-sport, doesn't matter. And there's an agenda, like unconscious agenda the patient or the client has, which is he's going to tell me something, or I'm going to talk to him. It's going to magically make my pain go away. And of course, the problem is the pain is not going to go away. There's no success without pain. There's no improvement in your condition without pain. You have to make changes that are painful. And you have to understand how the brain and mind works first, that this is all limbic system talk. And you don't want to take it too seriously in these sort of scenarios, because it's not looking out for your long-term interest. And that's the number one first thing. So you really, really have to do this. And then we have to do things. I teach people, let's say, meditation. And it's just like other people here, but it's a specific way of doing it, which is you focus your attention on your breathing. As soon as your mind wanders for anything, you say to yourself in your head, I am noticing. And then you fill in the blanks. I am noticing my back is hurting. I'm noticing the sound of a lawnmower outside. I'm noticing the smell of coffee. I'm noticing the thought that this fucking sucks. I'm noticing that I want to see how many minutes are left in this meditation. I'm noticing that my mind's all over the place. So that's activating the observing self, or metacognition. So every time you do that, you're actually strengthening that function of your brain. It's a rep. And so I'm noticing. Then you say, thank you, mind, or isn't that interesting? In other words, isn't that interesting? Or thank you, mind, for limbic system, for pointing stuff out. You're supposed to be distracted. You can't meditate. That's bullshit. No one meditates and never loses focus. That's impossible. The good meditators catch themselves losing focus right away and then bring themselves back. And so you say, thank you, mind, or isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting how I was focusing my attention on my breath, and I smell coffee, and therefore I started thinking about going to Canadian Tim Hortons or Starbucks or whatever, and have my favorite coffee. Oh, I'm meditating. Oh yeah. Thank you, mind. I noticed noticing the thought that I was thinking about. Coffee. Thank you, mind. What was I doing? Oh, breathing. And you bring your attention baback. So then that's an actual workout training you can do, because it's like Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan as you're punched in your mouth, right? If you can't do that sitting down in a room by yourself, how are you going to be able to do this in real life when you're actually pissed off and someone cuts you off, and you want to, instead of saying, I got to pay this guy back, this guy's an asshole, I'm going to follow him, I'm going to, even though I'm going to miss my daughter's birthday potentially be late, go to jail, or eat this even though it's against my diet, whatever it is, right? To be able to say, when your actual limbic system's actually really activated, your emotions, your amygdala hijacks the frontal lobe, deactivates part of it, makes it basically go offline, not completely, of course. And you say, I'm noticing the urge to follow this guy right now, but I said I was going to get home for my daughter's birthday on time. I promised her. So I'm going to live my life and make a decision right now to live in line with my goals and values, which is to get home, be a good dad, and get home on time, even though I'm feeling jacked right now. I'm feeling pissed off. So you need to do that. Those are like the beginning steps. Pretty much anyone who comes to me who's got anxiety, I have to help them eliminate the agenda of control, which is, can you help me control or eliminate or reduce all my anxiety and stress? And I say, well, you have to understand how it works first. And the harder you try to control stress and anxiety, the more like you go to your Olympic Games and you're like, okay, stop being anxious, got to relax. That's not going to help. You have to allow yourself to feel
trying to force yourself to go to sleep, right?
That's right. And coaches do that with players and athletes all the time, saying, you need to relax, chill out. That doesn't help. Nobody chills out and relaxes when someone tells them to. A better thing for a coach would be, of course you're anxious. You're at the Olympic Games. It's normal to feel anxious. Allow that to be there because that's energy you can use. That's what they should be saying. This is extremely important. And then once you understand this idea again of, I don't make my decisions about how to behave, like what I should put in my mouth, whether I should go to the gym, based on my moods. It's like love. You say like love is more of a verb, right? It's more like you are a loving person. I don't like love. Love my wife or something like this, or my daughter, or my grandparents, or whatever it is, right? It's like love is more of a verb. Like you start to feel like if you don't. It's not like a magical thing that you just like pulls you. You need to interact with that person in a loving way, and there's a feedback mechanism where they act loving back to you, and you love that, and that becomes what it's about. So people constantly put the chicken before the egg or the cart before the horse or whatever. What they're doing is they feel like I'll take action when I'm in the mood. It's constantly about in the mood, and moods come after you take action. And this is where it's again backwards. So you say, I don't feel like working out today. Well, I can't decide that until I go for the 5-minute rule for 5 minutes. I'm going to go down, get on the treadmill. If I really feel as sick as my mind was telling me, as tired as my mind was telling me, I will stop. I give myself 100% permission to stop. It's like someone who says, I don't like tomatoes. I'm like, well, do you eat tomatoes? I tried them when I was 5. I didn't like them. And you'd be like, okay, you don't know shit about tomatoes. So it's been like 30 years since you've had a tomato. So eat another tomato and then you can tell me if you don't like tomatoes or whatever it is. You don't know until you try. So that's the thing. It's the limbic system is, if it runs your life, it's going to ruin your life.
Yeah, I feel like this is such a crucial conversation about what's really going on, even, with what you deal with, helping your clients with their performance and anxiety, stress, and with me helping my clients with their bodies and getting in better shape and controlling their ability to control their weight, their body fat percentage. And even I'm dealing with this too personally while growing my business, what to focus on. Oh, I don't feel like doing that today. I got to sit down and do it. I had a really interesting year last year where I realized, I wasn't doing what I needed to do, even though I didn't feel like it. And it's such an important conversation. Chris, I think the big takeaway is helping people understand how their brain works is foundational just in life. Like this should be a course in school. Like, hey, this is a life skill. This is something that if you don't get this, you're going to think that, oh no, I'm a person who loves food. It's like everybody loves food. Everybody loves food. I mean, some people don't, for sure, but everybody loves food. The majority of people love sweets. It's just you're getting hijacked by that limbic system because, not to go into all the details that happen there, but because certain things taste good or certain things taste better than others. You get more of a dopamine hit from delicious food than you do from chicken and broccoli, right? A question for you. If the first step is this, and you said something great, basically the awareness comes first, the education and awareness, then you have to put in the reps, meaning you have to when it's hard, that's when it matters to put in the reps, right? Putting in the reps no matter what, but especially when it's hard, practicing when it's hard to do. What about neurofeedback and some of the other methods you use? Does that speed things up? And if not, what does? How can we what could fast forward this process of putting ourselves in control, just besides the awareness, the education, and putting in the reps?
Yeah. So there's another concept we can maybe come back to later. It's called the law of contrasting. It's a sneak peek to hopefully my next YouTube video when I get around to filming this, but we'll come back to that. So let's say with neurofeedback, let's say we do a brain map, a quantitative EEG, where you take someone's brain and compare it to people their age. And the person's got lots of stress. And we see that they have excess fast waves in the brain.
The beta, you said the beta, right?
Okay. That's right. We call it high beta. And this, some people can live their life and they're perfectly fine and doing okay with it. But let's say one of the issues is this idea that they have trouble motivating and this sort of thing. So often, and I see this a lot with the people who think they have ADHD, but it's really anxiety-based, this high beta-based stuff, which is, these are people that are paralyzed. It's like paralysis by analysis. They're like indecisive. There's too many options. And what they're doing is their brains are revved really, really high. And, what we could do then in those cases is that maybe the problem of you getting motivated is excess stress, excess anxiety, excess like self-doubt, questioning, mind racing, these sorts of things. And then you can do neuromodulation strategies, neurofeedback being one of them. So neurofeedback is a type of neuromodulation where you put an EEG on someone's head, depending on where the brain map finds issues, not just where it finds issues, it has to correlate with your actual problems. And let's say there's too much fast wave. And what they do is they watch, for example, videos or play games. Videos is easier to understand. You watch a video every time. There's usually a clinician behind the other computer. Every time the brain's producing too much fast waves, because the brain's oscillating, is moving up and down. So let's say it's like a car. Ideally you want about 2,500 RPMs when it's in neutral, and this person's brain, and 5,000 RPMs is a red line. So this person's brain's sitting in neutral at 4,000 RPMs. So it's higher, it's revving faster, but it's not just stuck exactly at 4,000. It's kind of revving between like 35, 45. It's on average 4,000. And what we do is every time the brain oscillates down, in other words, the fast beta comes down, the video you're watching, whatever it is, a movie or YouTube, Netflix, we have all these different things you can do, and the video will play. And you're like, oh, good, my video. And then when it's going too fast again, it pauses. You're like, oh, okay. And it plays and it pauses. So what you're doing is saying good, bad, good, bad, good, but it's operant conditioning, reinforcing what's happening. And you're coaxing the brain to do more of what we want it to do. Kind of like a personal trainer. You did 10 reps. Tomorrow, let's do 11 reps, or whatever, the next week. And
not even that, but quality reps. So it's not going to count if the rep isn't, it's that annoying personal trainer who's going to be like, yeah, that one doesn't count, bro. You're going to have to do another one because, you got sloppy or whatever, didn't go down all the way.
You bounce it off your chest. Yeah. Arched your back.
It's funny you answer that because basically what I hear you saying is, it's the education, it's the awareness, it's the reps. How do you speed it up? Well, you get a better trainer so that you're not the one who's training yourself thinking that you're doing a good job. You're having feedback or data, specifically data. This isn't even a person, this is a machine, although you're facilitating it, Chris, and other people who practice this. And then you're using that data to make sure, based on what we understand about a person's problem and where they might be struggling, what area of their brain they might be struggling with.
Yep.
Those are good reps. Those are not good reps. And we're going to sit here until we do those good reps. And we're going to sit here until you just get the exercise technique right, is kind of the analogy I'm thinking of.
Yeah, it makes sense. And you can think of it also as, I call it, what we're doing is, we're not completely changing someone's brain. We're not going to change your personality completely, for example. What we're doing is introducing what I call neurological flexibility. So remember I was saying the RPMs are kind of stuck between 35 and 4,500, on average 4,000 RPMs. And what we're trying to do is give it flexibility. So just as an example, so I've done my brain map on myself maybe 7 times in 10 years. And I've done a lot of stuff to my brain, neurofeedback, like hundreds of sessions, and electrical stimulation of the brain, TDCS, AVE, everything you think of. And it's always the same. I have the exact same brain profile. I have excessive fast waves in the central part of my brain, much like 99.9th percentile of these fast waves in this specific area. This is part of the cingulate cortex. Doesn't really matter, but for some people, it can change your brain pattern altogether. I don't think that's the goal. What we do is make your brain more flexible. So, like, let's say my arm, I can keep it straight out, right? And then, but it's stuck this way. It only moves like just a tiny bit. But now I go to a physiotherapist. We can go back and forth. I can go all the way and touch I can go all the way. I can go extend and flex my arm all the way. But my arm is still mostly straight out most of the time. But when I need to, I can now scratch my back, for example, because I can reach back there now because I did this physio stretching and stuff on my arm. So it's the same as your brain. You're making it more flexible. So it still may by default be kind of fast, but when it's time to shut it down, for example, to sleep or to notice I'm really anxious and I'm really worked up, I can, the person can notice that and modulate that themselves. And because their brain has now got that neural pathway of slowing down as well. So this is, that's an example. One thing that might be useful, that even more accessible to people listening, in the last year or two, I guess it's been about a year now, I've been really personally using this and using it with some of my clients, something called audio visual entrainment and CES, or cranial electrical therapy stimulation. There's a unit that I use, and I don't get money by telling you people this to buy it. The company is technically a Canadian company. It's called mindalive.com. And there's these audiovisual entrainment units, but these guys have been around since like 1981, right? These are like the OGs in this area. And they have one unit called the David Delight, which is a basic audiovisual entrainment unit. And then they have the David Delight Pro, which has the cranial electrical stimulation built in. So this is all like gobbledygook what I'm saying. So I'll explain what these are. These are goggles that you put on and they pulsate at particular wavelengths. So for example, you've probably heard of Andrew Huberman. And this is, again, me hearing Andrew Huberman and applying it to my own life because I was noticing I was just taking too much on and getting stress-related issues. And I thought, I need to do something. I'm like an expert in this and I can't just work. And so Huberman talks about this idea of non-sleep deep rest, NSDR. Maybe he hasn't talked about it much.
Is that a real term or is that something he made up? I've heard him talk about it before. Do you know?
I think he made up the acronym. I believe. And it's obviously not his idea, this idea of having brief periods of rest. Like every culture has this.
It's called meditation or, right.
Yeah, exactly. So he talks about like yoga nidra, basically body scans and stuff like this. So me being the neuroscience part of me said, you know what? And all the equipment I have, I can do this on steroids. How about like sitting down every afternoon around 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and instead of meditating, I'm going to make sure I go into a deep state of deep rest, more than I could with a hypnosis script, more than I could with a yoga nidra, like body scan script. And so what it does, let's give you an example. So people when your brain is in the present state, when you're not really thinking, you're in the present moment, you're not really worried, you're not really thinking of the future or the past, you're kind of like here and now. We're probably, for the most part, both of us producing a decent amount of alpha. These are alpha waves, which are between 8 and 12 hertz or cycles per second of electrical blips in your brain. We produce all the brain waves all the time. There's delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma, but there's certain states that certain ones predominate. So when we meditate, we tend to produce more alpha waves when we're in that present moment. When we're worried, we produce more beta waves. So it's pretty obvious. When we're really sleepy, daydreamy, or going down to theta, this kind of thing. So you kind of pass through these stages when you go to sleep as well. And what we know is people who have excess fast wave activity tend to benefit from getting audiovisual entrainment or making their brains produce more alpha waves. So when alpha goes up, beta goes down. Alpha is like the most neutral part of the brainwave spectrum. And I'll give you an example. When I took a course on neuromeditation, and one thing we know with meditation is the posterior cingulate, which is a central back part of the brain. When we're thinking, it's the home of the default mode network. When we're thinking, that part lights up, and that means like an fMRI. That means blood oxygen. But what we're talking about in the EEG is beta waves. So beta is the same thing as blood oxygen. It's basically activated. So it lights up when we're thinking. But when people meditate, it goes down, and alpha goes up. So beta goes down, alpha goes up. And so what happens is, so I experimented. I put the sensor on my head, and I would meditate, and I made the system give me feedback of just a tone. So every time there's too much beta waves and not enough alpha, my brain, the sound, I get a tone. And then when I stop thinking. In other words, like the idea of meditating in a way, not the type I explained earlier, but just not thinking, blank mind, the sound would go off. And of course, then I would realize, hey, the sound went off, and all of a sudden the sound comes back on.
Then you start thinking, right?
Exactly. And that was, I'm the type of person that I like looking at the research, but I want to experience things for myself before I actually buy into them. And so that was like, wow, like that increasing alpha and reducing beta in the back of the brain. That is a state of non-thinking, of like the goal of some types of meditation. And long story short, you can put these goggles on, these audio-visual entrainment goggles, like the David Delight or the David Delight Pro. And what it does is pulsates lights. Let's say there's like 30 different things you can do on it. But let's say you use meditation number 1, that's the setting. That's alpha, it's 10 hertz. And what it does is it pulsates lights 10 times a second. And you hear a pulsing in your ear. Think of binaural beats, but these are not binaural. There's a button to make it binaural, but it turns out that binaural is not as good as actual beats going pop, 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 like 10 times a second. So that's congruent with what you're seeing in your eyes. Of course, your eyes are closed. You're lying back, like you're sitting back, like you're meditating. And I also use the fancy one, the expensive one, which is called cranial electrical stimulation, which in the United States, the most popular brand is called AlphaStim. But this is pulsating at 100 hertz, but it's pulsating also at 10 times a second at 100 hertz. It's hard to explain, but it's alternating current stimulation. That's been shown separately. There's no research putting these together, but I started using them together, and some of my clients have, and they find it stronger, which makes sense. But anyways, within 5 to 6 minutes, your brain will mimic the pulsing. Forget about the electrical current right now, just the pulsing lights and beats in your ears. After about 5 or 6 minutes, most people, if you did an EEG on them, their brain would be pulsing at 10 times a second. And it basically forces your brain into this deep state of meditation. I usually go in and out of consciousness, and I'm in this sort of drowsy state. Then I come back, but you get extremely relaxed. Of course, I have my Oura ring on, and I put it on for 30 minutes. And I'm measuring my heart rate, my HRV, and my temperature. And invariably, like temperature goes up, heart rate goes down, and HRV goes up as well. So this is what I call NSDR on steroids. In other words, you can help yourself do this. And the clients I work with that are super high achievers that say to me, I don't have time to meditate. Like, when am I going to do that? And I'm a little bit in that camp, so I can understand that. And I'm like, you know what? But this is different. We're going to do something. We're going to do an AVE session. You're going to put these goggles on, press these buttons, and then lay back. It's going to help you do this. And the fact that you're actually doing that, as opposed to like, I'm just going to go in my office and sit and close the door and like close my eyes and put my timer on for 15 to 20 minutes. People are much more motivated when they actually use something that is going to make sure that you get a good session, even if you don't. So I wouldn't say it's a complete replacement for meditation, because the meditation I described earlier is a training of I'm noticing, thank you mind, this kind of thing, the observing self and strengthening that. This will make it too easy, but it's going to put you in a state of deep rest, for that 30 minutes. And I invariably come out of this like it's a different day. Like I feel like I'm a different person. You take a nap and you wake up, or it's the next day. It's like no matter what mood you're in before, it's like a reset. Like you restarted your computer. And I have had clients that have had serious problems with alcohol, marijuana abuse, and they use this, and they're like completely clean. I'm not saying every client in the world this happens to, but we know from some of the brainwave research, people who abuse alcohol and cannabis tend to have excess fast waves in the brain or a lack of alpha. So it makes sense that this would work because they're getting what they're actually searching for from these substances. Anyways, this is something that is a form of neuromodulation that is really cool. And I still use it most days of the week.
Interesting. Yeah. And it takes 30 minutes. Do you do this with your clients while you're together, or you teach them how to do it and they do it on their own?
Yeah, no, what we do is in my office, I actually bought a bunch of them and then I rent to own to my clients because they're like the cheapest ones, like $400. And so it's hard to convince people, even if they try it at my office. I'll say, look, it's like $50 a week until you pay it off. And that way you can, don't have to pay it all up front. And if you can take it back after 2 weeks, you lose $100, but at least you didn't lose $400. So this is it's an adjunct, but I can give you like 10 people that I've worked with that just, the people who use it consistently find it helpful. There's other people have the opposite problem. Their brains are underactivated. This is sometimes correlated with ADHD, but other issues as well, like depression. I've had people with brain cancer and things like this. So their brain's got lots of slow waves. And we do a different setting. We actually train up beta, fast waves, and they put it on and it can energize you. One of the things that sold me on it, there's one setting on the David Delight Pro where it starts off for 12 minutes at 7.8 hertz, which is the border between theta and alpha, so slow waves. So it brings you down to slow, super relaxed state. And then after 12 minutes, it flips and it goes up to 19 hertz, which is beta waves. And I did this a number of times because at first I didn't believe it. I'm like, this is probably bogus. And then I experienced it. And what happens is halfway through, I'm like super relaxed. And all of a sudden, I'm like super awake. And I was like, that convinced me again, that personal experience. I thought, wow, that is AVE in action. Like I was like in this, I didn't realize I was like in this meditative deep state, and then it goes faster. And all of a sudden I'm just like wired. And I thought, holy cow. But some people are so hardwired, they're not able to let go. Like you can overpower it by thinking of other things, and you have to let go for this to work. So some people put it on. So I noticed nothing. And these are the people that are super over controlled, we call it. They have this super defensive, defenses that are up to protect them. They're very, they often don't like alcohol or things like this because they don't like to have anything that changes their state of mind, and they're not hypnotizable as well. So there is a subgroup of people that this won't work on, but it really works well for the people that can't get themselves to meditate. It's like, this will meditate for you practically, as long as you sit down and just let it do its thing. And almost anyone that's used it is like, almost nobody takes it back, returns it. It seems like old technology too. It's been around for a long time, but it's, there's new research coming out supporting it as well, but they're acting like it's something different. It's all the same stuff. It's the same. There's a big thing that happened in some European university. It had this like TED Talk like video, and there are a whole bunch of people in the room with strobe lights. And I'm like, this is nothing new. Like, we've discovered this. It's like, no, you didn't. This is called AVE, audio visual entrainment. It's been around for like 50 years. But yeah, cool stuff.
Interesting. You know what? I've done audio visual entrainment once, but I wasn't properly explained. It was in a group, and it was promoted like it was going to be like an ayahuasca session, and it wasn't. But anyway, Chris, man, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm going to have all the links to the products that you mentioned. And also, if you're interested in hearing more from Dr. Friesen, go to Friesen Performance with Dr. Chris Friesen on YouTube. And you spell his name, Chris, Chris, Friesen, Friesen. And you can find him there easily and watch more of his information. Chris, we got to do this again, man. I really miss our conversations. And I feel like we just scratched the surface again. We just started warming up like, halfway into it, just because we had that initial catch-up period, right? But thanks so much for coming on the show, and we got to catch up again soon.
For sure. Yeah, I'm in.
Awesome. That's it for today, my friend. I hope you came away from the conversation with Dr. Chris Friesen with some new insight into your own psychology, what you might be struggling with, what you need to take your success to the next level. And I'd even ask you, what's something actionable that you can do after listening to this episode today? That's what I want you to focus on. Now, until our next interview, we're going to meet again on Friday. And this time, I'm going to talk about the most powerful way to build muscle. So when it comes to growing muscle, there's one principle that you must use to get better results. So have you been in a situation where you've been working out, but you don't see changes in your body? This principle that I'm going to share with you on the next episode on Friday is going to explain exactly what's missing, why you're not getting changes, and most importantly, what you need to do to implement it to see better results in less than 30 days. To find out more, tune in on Friday. Speak to you then. That's a wrap on today's episode, folks. We truly hope that you found immense value in our discussions and that these insights will help propel you to that next level of health, regardless of where you are right now. And if you know someone who could benefit from listening to this episode, perhaps a fellow high achiever or driven professional in your network, do us a favor and share it with them. You never know how much of an impact these conversations can have on someone's life and success. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Legendary Life Podcast. We're on a mission to help you reach your fullest potential, and your support means the world to us. So until next time, stay ambitious, stay focused, and keep crushing your health goals.